The courtroom hummed like a hive. When the trial started, reporters spoke softly into phones, pens clicking against notepads as they theorized the drama to come. Viewers of the popular reality TV show Sister Wives were seated shoulder to shoulder, some clutching notebooks of their own, hoping to record all the details they could share online afterwards. Even nosy neighbors from Flagstaff and the rest of the country had managed to crowd the benches, fueled by curiosity and disbelief that television's most infamous family was currently on trial. The walls appeared to reverberate with excitement. And yet, under it all, there was a curious weight that caused individuals to sit up straighter, hold their breath a little longer, and gaze towards the doors as though anticipating a storm to burst in. All had watched the smiling faces on TV years ago. Kody Brown with his wives, posing as visionaries of a new style of family. They had constructed a show on unity, on presenting the strange but loving format of plural marriage. But beneath that glossy veneer, cracks over many years had run deep through the foundations. Now it all boiled down to this. Kody Brown was not here as a reality television celebrity. He was not here as the patriarch of a family dynasty. He stood before her as a man accused, not of acts that would imprison him, but of betrayal, of broken promises, and of financial dishonesty that had broken up the very people once at his side. The judge, her robe billowing behind her, swept into the room, and at once the murmurs faded into silence. It wasn't quiet in an ordinary sense. It was the sort of silence that weighed heavily, lying on everyone like a blanket. The sort that brought the noise of one's own breathing, of the shuffle of one's own shoes on the floor, of the booming beat of one's own heart, into sharp focus. It was the hush that heralded something enormous getting underway. An ache of silence so keen it seemed capable of cutting glass. The clerk gave the call. Brown versus Brown. The phrase rang across the room, and even the non-diehards could sense the weight. This wasn't merely a family argument. This was history being made, the fall of one of reality TV's most notorious family dynasties, and it was live right before their eyes. Kody hadn't arrived yet, and that only made the anticipation higher. Hushed rumors went flying down the benches like flames. Do you think he'll come with Robin? What about Christine? Is she actually here? I heard there's evidence of money missing. Rumors were endless, but the underlying current was the same. People craved explanations. They longed to witness the man who had once claimed to be all about love and togetherness get caught up in the repercussions of his actions. When the doors at last opened, all eyes turned. Stepping in was Christine, chin up, her gait firm, dressed in a rich color of green that appeared to embody both renewal and fortitude. Behind her trailed Janelle, no nonsense as always, with folders clutched under her arm like a woman ready for war. Mary followed, more subdued, her face inscrutable but her presence forceful. The three women who had grown apart in years stood united on the same side now, their force concentrated. The sheer sight created a shiver of amazement throughout the room. The benches groaned as the people moved to hush. There with him. All three of them, against him. And then at last, Kody arrived. The door swung open once more, and he came inside slowly, a man who had once been so confident now wreathed in tension. His hair, once such a part of his swagger, was rumpled, his steps uncertain. He sported a dark suit, but it hung off him in a manner that said exhaustion, rather than power. Behind him, as expected by all, was Robin, white-knuckling a folder held tightly in her hands. She walked with head downcast, lips pursed in thin line, as if preparing herself for the storm she knew they could not outface. The crowd shifted again, their gaze flicking between Kody and the three wives. This was the photo everyone had been waiting for. The man who had constructed his life around control and persuasion, now stuck between the women who once believed in him, and the wife who still stood up for him. Kody stopped for a moment before taking a seat, his eyes flitting fleetingly over Christine's. If there was once warmth, it was gone now. Christine did not waver. Janelle opened her folder without a glance up. Mary sat absolutely still, her expression unreadable though a hurricane churned in her eyes. The tension between them grew. It was a silence of betrayal recalled, of trust shattered laid bare. A silence of years of pent-up tension that had been about to boil over for so long finally meeting in one room. Even the judge sensed the tension in the room. She peered over her spectacles at the parties in front of her and let the silence hang, perhaps realizing that at this moment words were not needed. The faces said it all well enough. Kody finally sat, his hands clasped together as in prayer, but no prayer would be able to protect him from what lay ahead. Robin bent near him, speaking softly in his ear, but whatever words she attempted to tell him seemed to roll off him like raindrops on stone. His shoulders slumped, his jaw clenched. He'd weathered cameras, critics, and endless family feuds before, but never had he ever withstood it all under oath, under the bright lights of a courtroom where there was no editing, no do-overs, no spin. The judge rapped her gavel gently, not to quiet the room, but to establish the tone. The case was on. But even as the ceremony began, names called out, attorneys identified, the silence persisted, hanging heavily over the room. It was the silence of expectation, the silence before an explosion. Everyone knew that this trial would not merely uncover figures on bank accounts or scribbles on deeds. It would uncover the truth about loyalty, betrayal, greed, and love distorted. For years, fans had been wondering, what exactly went on behind the scenes of Sister Wives? Why did Christine finally depart? What drove Janelle to breaking point? How did Mary survive so much distance yet remain loyal? And how much of Robin's relationship with Kody was founded on love, and how much on control? Today, those answers would finally be revealed. But during that initial session, when the case was called and the stillness settled over the courtroom, nobody could have imagined how cataclysmic the secrets were to prove. The silence wasn't a mere lack of noise. It was a threat, a portent of the tempest that was soon to ravage the courtroom. And as Kody moved uncomfortably in his seat, looking nervously at the women whom he once referred to as his family, the quiet seemed to mouth the reality that everyone already knew in their gut. This was more than a trial. This was Kody Brown's reckoning. The massive wooden doors of the courtroom groaned open once more, and at once the atmosphere changed. It was as if everyone had been holding their breath, waiting for this moment, waiting for him. Discourse that had started to swirl, following the judge's opening words, immediately fell silent. Heads turned in tandem, cameras readjusted their focus, and the soft clunk of shoes against the gleaming floor seemed to resonate through the chamber. Kody Brown stepped inside. The guy who used to walk into the living rooms of America every Sunday evening with confidence, charm, and a sense of authority now walked differently. The swagger was gone, the cocky tilt of the chin, the ready smile he used to disarm both fans and critics. Instead, his gait was heavy, measured, almost tentative. His eyes flickered to the crowd for a moment, then back down to the floor, as though he could already sense the burden of 1,000 gazes. For years Kody had loomed large, the outspoken father of a sprawling polygamous clan, a man who claimed to be informed by faith, love, and a dream of harmony. But on this day, that vision appeared to disintegrate with each step he made toward the defendant's table. The cameras picked up on all of it. The Adam's apple bob in his neck, the slump of his shoulders, as if weighted with invisible shackles, the sharp look he shot at the three women who now faced him. And then Robin. She trailed behind, her elbow grazing his as if anchoring herself to him. She did not look down like Kody did. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, intensely, like a soldier reading the field before a battle. She clutched a fat folder, papers sticking out at peculiar angles, the corners already creased from the tightness of her hold. Her lips had been pressed so closely together that they turned pale, but determination was etched on her face. Robin wasn't here to stay as a wife. She was here as Kody's last and sole supporter. The two of them together filled everyone with whispers that slithered through the crowd. People shifted toward one another, whispering just loud enough to be heard by their neighbors. Of course she's here. Look at her, she's fighting for him. She thinks she know the money. The judge's gavel was needed to bang again to quiet everyone, and even then, the hum of it lingered, buzzing under the silence like a thin current of electricity. Kody's eyes flashed up just long enough to catch Christine's across the room. The instant was fleeting, but it held a history too heavy to be spoken. Once, Christine was the woman who laughed hardest at his humor, who worked hardest to hold the family together, who cleaned, cooked, and cared as Kody wandered from house to house. Today, her eyes were cold, unwavering, and unyielding. It was not the gaze of an aggrieved wife. It was the gaze of a woman who had finally escaped and did not care to confront reality. Then his gaze rested on Janelle. She sat straight, serene, her hands crossed demurely over the sheaf of documents she had brought. Janelle was always down to earth, the one who managed money, who used her head rather than her heart. As a child, she had been his best supporter, the wife who understood his reasoning, even when no one else would. Today, though her face was icy, practically businesslike, like she was getting ready for a business meeting as opposed to a courtroom battle, her remoteness was frightening. It was not about lingering sentiment, but determination, the sort of determination which appears when a person has finally exhausted all their patience. And then there was Mary. She sat apart from the others, her posture stiff, her expression inscrutable. Mary had been Kody's first wife, his lawful wife, the one who had begun it all. She had experienced more distance, more rejection, and more unspoken sorrow than the rest of them. For years fans had seen her recede into the distance, a ghost of the marriage she had had. Now in the courtroom, she was not a ghost, she was flesh and blood, her presence substantial, her silence more overwhelming than any words she might have uttered. When Kody saw her, she did not stir, did not blink, but the glance she cast at him, remote, nearly pitying, was sufficient to make him turn quickly away. Robin leaned in close to Kody's ear, whispering something into his ear. The microphones didn't catch it, but those who sat close enough to see were certain they saw her form the words. "Stay calm." Kody nodded ever so slightly, but his crossed arms betrayed him. He sat rigidly, knuckles white against the wooden table, jaw clenching every time the wives across the aisle shuffled their papers, or leaned in to whisper to their attorneys. The judge watched with professional detachment, but even she couldn't help feeling the unease in the room. She took a deep breath, her voice cutting through the heavy quiet. "We will proceed now with opening statements." The official statement was so close to being ridiculous. In the face of such naked human drama, this wasn't simply another case. This was years of love, betrayal, sacrifice, and anger all crashing together in one room. The audience leaned forward, hungry for the next moment. Reporters scribbled furiously, their pens racing to capture every detail. Kody's downcast eyes, Robin's iron grip on her folder, Christine's calm defiance, Janelle's quiet strength, Mary's haunting stillness. Even the smallest gesture felt monumental, like clues in a mystery the world had been following for over a decade. Kody fidgeted in his seat, jerking his tie into place with stiff movements, his chest heaving and falling, as though he couldn't quite breathe. He resembled less a man prepared to fight for his heritage, and more a man trapped, anxious to see a way out that no longer existed. Seated in front of him, the wives sat together, their energy even, their silence louder than any tantrum. For the first time in years, Kody Brown was not in charge. The authority he once wielded, the charm he had employed to placate, the power he had once exercised as patriarch to a plural clan, seemed to vanish in the harsh glare of the fluorescent courtroom. In the vacuum, there was only a man, bereft of his backdrop, his censoring, his calculated persona, compelled to confront the very individuals he had previously persuaded the world that he loved equally. When the judge motioned for the lawyers to stand, the room collectively took a deep breath. The trial was officially underway, but even before a witness had spoken a word of testimony, the unwritten reality was apparent to all in the room. This was not an ordinary family squabble. This was the dismantling of a man's empire, the uncovering of secrets long concealed, and the crash of promised pasts and current realities. And in that instant, while Kody sat among the whispers, the glares and the unrelenting stares of the women he had offended, the silence fell back, thick, heavy, inescapable. It was the silence of a legacy, disintegrating before it ever had a chance to be defended. The judge nodded once, hard, and the air in the courtroom grew instantly sharp. Each individual in the gallery slouched forward, notebooks at the ready, eyes on the fight that was about to take place. The quiet was no longer peaceful. It was charged, humming with anticipation. There weren't folks here merely for forms and legalese. They were here for answers, for truth, for the drama that had been stewing behind the shiny walls of reality TV for so long. Christine's attorney took the first step, tall with piercing eyes, and a voice that was authoritative. She pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose before moving to the middle of the room. She didn't bother with niceties. Instead, she faced the judge squarely and said, "Your Honor, this is not just about property or money. This is about manipulation, betrayal, and intentional withholding of resources that were intended for this family." The words fell like stones into water, rippling across the courtroom. People in the audience gasped. Kody's face tightened, his jaw clenching as though he wanted to interrupt. But the lawyer continued. "For years my client, Christine Brown, was assured that the land in Coyote Pass would be divided equally among the wives. She was assured security for her children, stability for her future. And yet, proof will demonstrate that Mr. Brown not only coerced her into relinquishing her rights to this property, but also denied her access to vital financial information. Information which would have altered everything." Christine sat steadfast, hands clasped tightly in her lap, but her eyes shone. She wasn't weeping. Not now. Those days of quiet misery were far behind her. Instead, they held a combination of sadness and determination. She had loved the man who sat across from her once. But today she was here for justice, not healing. Kody fidgeted in his seat, his mouth working as if he longed to speak. But Robin put a hand on his arm. A negative shake of the head. The cameras recorded it, and the movement lit like fire across social media in a matter of minutes. "Robin shuts Kody up in court." Headlines would subsequently shriek. But the drama was just beginning. Then Janelle's attorney stood up. In contrast to Christine's lawyer, he was not as boisterous, so deliberate, the sort of fellow who constructed his argument like he built his bricks. Solid, accurate, unyielding. He moved deliberately to the middle of the courtroom, his tone steady but incisive as a scalpel. "Your Honor, my client Janelle Brown was the financial pillar of this family. She budgeted, she sacrificed, she managed, and yet she was shocked to learn that Mr. Brown had hidden assets, totaling more than $200,000. These were not careless errors. These were intentional decisions. Decisions that left my client financially exposed while Mr. Brown channeled money into accounts that benefited him. And first and foremost, his legal wife Robin." There was a gasp of collective shock that ran through the gallery. Journalists wrote furiously, some mouths agape in shock. Christine looked at Janelle, her lips twisting into the slightest nod of solidarity. Two women who had once been painted as opponents on television were now sitting shoulder to shoulder, their solidarity being louder than any court declaration. Kody's fists clenched. He shook his head, muttering something only Robin could lip-read. Robin leaned forward, whispering rapidly, her words low and insistent. To the outside world it appeared to be desperation, cracks in their partnership beginning to show. Then Mary arrived. Her attorney didn't stand with melodramatic flair. She stood instead in quiet dignity, her voice soft but biting, each word carefully chosen. "Your Honor, my client, Mary Brown, was abandoned not only emotionally, but financially as well. There were promises made. Promises of mutual security, of stability, of equal standing. Instead, she was relegated. Her financial input disregarded. Her part diminished. She has been left alone, while Mr. Brown funneled his energy into a single relationship." The words lingered in the air like tobacco smoke, thick and choking. For an instant, even the judge hesitated, her pen suspended over the notepad, as if to recognize the enormity of what was being revealed. Mary didn't glance at Kody. She didn't so much as look in his direction. She just stared straight ahead, her expression calm, although her silence was heavier than any impassioned rant could have been. The years of hurt, of being pushed aside, of suffering while others got more. All of those things had come to this moment. The three wives had spoken, and in speaking they had drawn a tragic portrait. A man who once professed to love and lead them all equally, now stood accused of betrayal, secrecy, and favoritism, so extreme it was almost cruel. The crowd hummed with whispers, the noise building until the judge banged her gavel. "Order!" she shouted. But even her power couldn't entirely subdue the vibe. Everyone was aware that they had just seen the initial punch in what was going to be a ruthless fight. Kody finally stood, his face red, his voice cutting. "That's not true," he yelled, no longer able to hold himself back. "This is not betrayal. This is survival. Everything that I did for this family. For all of them." His tirade resonated through the room, but only brought skepticism in its wake. Reporters leaned forward, desperate to catch every syllable on tape. Fans in the crowd exchanged skeptical glances, some rolling their eyes. Wives held their tongues, their faces impassive. The judge's eyes pinched. "Mr. Brown, you will get your turn to speak. Sit down." Her voice did not allow dispute. Kody leaned back into his chair, his chest heaving with strained breaths. Robin grasped for his hand, but he jerked it away, angry, his face burning with mortification. Across the room, Christine permitted herself the tiniest, most momentary smile. Not a smile of happiness, but of vindication. For all those years, she had borne the burden of being doubted, dismissed, and diminished. Today, however, she was not just Christine the ex-wife. She was Christine, the truth-teller, the woman who was courageous enough to stand before the court and call for accountability. Janelle's eyes stayed steady, her face firm, as Mary just kept on watching, silent, her stillness louder than any threat. The three of them as one, unbreakable, steadfast, unshakable, were an image no one could have imagined. Years earlier, when the cameras first started rolling on their so-called perfect plural family, the courtroom erupted in tension as the judge requested a brief recess. Individuals suddenly erupted into whispers, the gallery abuzz with gossip. Reporters ran out into the hallway, dashing to get their stories to editors. Christine drops bombshell in court. Janelle accuses Kody of concealing $200K. Mary finally tells all. At the same time, Kody slumped in his seat, his face white, his hands shaking slightly as he massaged his temples. Robin whispered angrily beside him, telling him to hold on, but her words were backgrounded, muted by the ringing of the wives' accusations. For the first time ever, Kody Brown wasn't dictating the story. He wasn't controlling the storylines or crafting the image. The wives had taken over, and their words had hit like lightning. Session 1's silence had been oppressive. Session 2's entry had been strained. But Session 3 had detonated into revelation. And the crowd knew, positively, that this was just the start of it. The hall was still abuzz when the judge came back from recess. Reporters scurried back to their seats. Fans hissed quietly, and the three wives sat quietly, as if they already knew the storm had been a mere beginning. Kody was not, however, at ease. He fidgeted in his seat, bouncing one leg beneath the table, his hands drumming nervously. His expression bore the semblance of a man driven too far, backed into a corner, yet refusing to yield. The judge looked over her spectacles. "Mr. Brown, your case will now be argued. Proceed in a lawful manner." Kody rose quickly, too quickly, almost pushing his chair back. The sudden action caught Robin off guard, as well, and she instinctively grasped at his sleeve, but he pushed her off. His chest lifted and fell in abrupt gasps as he moved forward, his palms slapping onto the defense table with a crack that resounded throughout the courtroom. "This is not betrayal," he roared, his voice raw, angry, almost desperate. "This is survival. Every decision I made, every dollar I spent, every land deal, every financial choice, was to protect this family, to keep us together." They boomed out like thunder, but the courtroom didn't respond the way he had imagined. Rather than nods of comprehension, there were skeptical glances, raised eyebrows, and the silent scratching of pen on paper. The crowd was not stirred. They waited, watched, analyzed every fissure in his facade. Kody brushed his rumpled hair back, prowling the room like an animal in a cage. "You think it was easy? Keeping 4 wives, 18 kids, continual bills and a camera crew filming our every step? You think any husband could have done it better?" I supported this family on my back. Meanwhile, everyone else was complaining. Everyone else was criticizing. I was the one keeping it together. Christine shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her lips pressed into a tight line. Janelle raised an eyebrow, her expression serene but blank. Mary sat stock still, though the flash of her eyes betrayed the storm raging behind them. Judy Kintanti. Kody pointed toward them, his finger shaking. And now, after all the sacrifices I made, after all the sleepless nights, after all the battles I fought for them, they sit here accusing me of betrayal. They have forgotten everything I gave them. Everything. His voice broke on the final word, the anger giving way to something uglier. Fear. He was not merely fighting to protect his reputation. He was fighting to prevent the story from falling apart entirely, to avoid being revealed as the man behind the curtain, when the illusion of power had already been lost. The judge slapped her gavel once, sharply. Mr. Brown, calm down. You will get your time to put forward facts. Emotional outbursts are not evidence. Kody stood stock still, panting. His face beat red. He nodded slowly, swallowing the fury festering within him. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and attempted again, this time more composed, though the shake in his voice betrayed his struggle. Your Honor, he continued, the truth is straightforward. This family has always been in the crosshairs. From the moment we opened our doors to the world, people judged us, neighbors judged us, the state judged us. Even some of our children criticized the way we lived. I did what I had to do to defend what we built. Yes, I made choices. Yes, I transferred money. But I did it for them, for the wives who now turn against me, for the children who depended on me, for the vision of a family that could thrive in a world bent on destroying us. He spun, gesturing with his hand to the gallery, his voice mounting. Do you think that Christine could have handled the bills? Do you think Janelle, despite her numbers, could have handled the pressure? Do you think Mary, who didn't even want to be there most of the time, could have headed this family? No. It was me, always me. Gasps echoed through the courtroom, but this time not from shock at hidden money or secret accounts. It was the audacity of his words, the open belittling of the women who had lived beside him for decades. Christine's lawyer stood quickly, objecting, but the judge raised a hand. Let him finish, she said, her voice steady. Kody leaned closer to the microphone, his voice dropping low, almost conspiratorial. They accuse me of being a betrayer. They say that I stole from them. But what they fail to tell you, Your Honor, is how frequently I had to sacrifice my own desires, my own aspirations, my own future. They fail to inform you how frequently they hated me, belittled me, turned against me even as I worked my back out for them. They characterize me as the villain, yet I was the glue. Without me, the family would have broken up years ago. He stopped, his chest laboring, his fingers digging into the table's edges. For a second there was silence, sprawling through the room. He almost believed himself, his own story, but Christine's soft laughter shattered the tension like a knife. It wasn't a booming laugh. It wasn't a sneer. It was quiet, nearly sorrowful, but it was more powerful than any argument could have been. Christine slowly shook her head, her gaze fixed on Kody's. And with that single movement, the courtroom understood the reality. His words no longer had influence over her. Kody's face hardened, fury flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth to lash out again, but Janelle's lawyer rose, holding a thick stack of papers. Your Honor, he said calmly, since Mr. Brown insists his actions were for the family, I'd like to introduce financial records that will show otherwise. Records of money funneled into accounts solely in his and Robin's names. Records that contradict every word of his so-called defense. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, murmurs, the angry screeching of pens. The air was charged once again. Kody's head snapped toward the papers, his mouth agape in protest. But the judge slammed down her gavel. Enough. Mr. Brown, sit down. For the first time Kody stumbled. He stood there rigid, gaping at the papers as if they were explosive devices. Robin pulled at his sleeve, whispering hysterically, telling him to sit, to breathe, to remain calm. But Kody's chest rose and fell, his face deathly pale. He had come into this courtroom, thinking he could still shape the story, still persuade the world of his altruism. What he revealed instead was his rage, his desperation, his terror. Slowly he sank back into his chair, his hands trembling as he rubbed at his temples. Across the aisle, the wives sat steady, unmoved, their silence deafening. Christine's faint smile lingered, Janelle's calm gaze never wavered, and Mary's haunting stillness remained as sharp as ever. The judge leaned in, her voice calm, controlled. Mr. Brown, emotional arguments do not override financial realities. If you want to establish your defense, you will need to have evidence to support it. Otherwise, what your wives have testified, and these documents will remain. And at that moment, Kody realized the reality he had been trying to escape. His defense was not protecting him. It was drowning him further. The man who had once successfully persuaded millions that he was in charge, was now exposed as a man disintegrating before their eyes. The court, which had been filled with silence beforehand, now hummed with vitality. But under it all, one fact was certain. Kody Brown's defense had only widened the fissures in his kingdom further. The atmosphere within the courtroom had changed. The instant Janelle's attorney brought up that heavy pile of documents, every camera zoomed in, every pen hovered above the reporter's notepad, every eye glared at the defense table where Kody remained still. He had stormed, he had bellowed, he had cried sacrifice. But paper, cold, unyielding paper, never lies. The judge pushed her glasses back onto the bridge of her nose. Mr. Lawson, continue with your evidence. Janelle's lawyer moved forward, pushing the files onto the evidence table. The thud of the thick binder slamming down rang out like the sound of a gavel strike. These, Your Honor, are bank statements, land records and transaction records of more than 6 years. Records which show money transferred from joint family accounts into accounts in Mr. Brown's and his fourth wife, Robin's. Names only. A shocked gasp ran through the courtroom. Even the journalists, schooled to remain impartial, couldn't conceal their wide eyes as murmurs flashed through the gallery, like fire in dry underbrush. Christine rested her arms on her knees, eyes flashing with silent triumph. Janelle just nodded at the evidence, as if she had expected this all along. Mary remained stone silent, her face impassive, but tension in her shoulders said it all. The judge turned to Kody. Mr. Brown, do you want to respond, before I permit the records to be entered? Kody rose suddenly, his chair squealing on the floor. His face was white now, drained of the anger that had once coursed through him. These are distorted records, he bellowed, his voice breaking. This is taken out of context. You can't see how we lived, how we had to shift money in order to live. It was all strategy, all planning for this family's future. The judge's eyebrow went up. Strategy? Do tell. Kody's jaw flexed. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could get the words out, Christine's attorney stood up. If I may, Your Honor, we've pointed out portions of these documents that do their own talking. The attorney flipped open the binder, holding up magnified photocopies for the judge to behold. Black and white rows of numbers crossed the page. Withdrawals, deposits, transfers. But it was the bold red ovals that elicited gasps. Here, the attorney continued, pointing to the page, we have $200,000 being moved out of the family's Coyote Pass account into an account in only the names of Kody Brown and Robin Brown. No one else had access. No signatures. No warnings. Another page. Here, $75,000. In royalties of the show's sister wives. Again going exclusively into Kody and Robin's account. And another. Here, the down payment on Robin's home. A home bought while the other wives were instructed to wait for their turn. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, murmurs, furious clatter of reporters racing to type. Christine looked at Janelle, and for the very first time during the trial, the two women exchanged a glance. A look of vindication. Kody slammed his fist on the table. That money was for stability, for the future, for a family home. His voice rose higher, almost to shrillness. You don't understand. They don't understand. Robin was the one who remained faithful, the one who stood by me when the others turned against me. Of course I invested in her protection. The judge rapped her gavel. Order. Mr. Brown, calm yourself. But Kody could not desist. He shook a quivering finger at Christine and Janelle. They left me. They wanted me to fail. They sat back and watched as I struggled. As I worked. And now they have the nerve to accuse me of betrayal? They are the betrayers. Christine stood up slowly, her attorney's hand touching her arm as if to hold her back. But she continued until she was standing upright, voice steady and composed. We didn't leave you, Kody. You left us. Every secret account, every deception, every time you instructed us to trust the process as you established your new life with Robin, that was betrayal. Not this. The courtroom fell into silence. Christine's words didn't need volume. They carried the weight of years of suppressed truth. Janelle stood beside him, her voice harder, icier. You said I was good with numbers. You said I should take care of the budgeting, the taxes, the paperwork. But behind my back, you funneled money into accounts I didn't even know we had. You didn't just betray us, Kody, you mocked us. You manipulated us. Mary then came to life. She didn't stand up. She didn't shout. She just whispered, I stayed later than I should have, and I paid for it. Her voice, a mere whisper, was more brutally cutting than any bellow. Kody's expression twisted, his eyes switching between the two wives. He appeared less a man defending himself and more of a man in over his head, thrashing for breath. This is lies, he shouted, his voice trembling. You all profited from my labor. You lived in houses I paid for, drove vehicles I purchased, ate food I supplied. And now you sit here, grouping against me, playing victim. The judge's voice sliced across. Enough, Mr. Brown. Sit down. But Kody didn't stir. His chest labored, his fists shaking. Robin gripped his arm, her face ashen, her lips mouthing urgent words barely audible. At last, with a choked gasp, he slumped back into his chair, shoving his face into his hands. The judge faced the lawyers again. The records will be admitted. The evidence stands. A stunned silence fell over the courtroom, as the gravity of those words sank in. For years, Sister Wives fans had surmised, argued, speculated about the actual balance of power in the Brown household. Now the truth was no longer speculation. It was typed in black lettering, emblazoned with bank logos and account numbers. The pretense of equality, the fantasy Kody once peddled to millions, was destroyed before the eyes of the world. Reporters scrambled to write their headlines. Onlookers in the stands shared incredulous murmurs. And at the defense table, Kody Brown remained shattered, a man whose kingdom of dominance had fallen before the unarguable power of paper records. The wives sat in silence, their own silence shouting more than anything else. For years their own voices had been muted by Kody's story. But here in this courtroom, with these papers, they did not have to shout anymore. The truth shouted for them. And at the end of the session, one thing burned in the minds of all present. If this was only the tip of the iceberg of evidence, what else was still kept under wraps in Kody Brown's life? The ring of the judge's gavel sounded like thunder, and the evidence presentation was closed. But the room did not settle. It simply seethed hotter. The air was charged, heavy as if everyone who filled the courtroom had been holding his breath for too long and finally released it in a sweep of shock. Kody sat hunched in his chair, his hands clamped over his face. His chest heaved and fell in uneven breaths. For the first time ever, he didn't resemble the smooth man who had strode across TV screens for over a dozen years. He resembled a trapped man, deprived of his masks, laid bare for everyone to witness. Robin leaned in close, whispering wildly into his ear. Her hand was around his arm, nails driven into the material of his suit sleeve. He shook his head, then nodded, as if each word she provided only turned the knife further. On the other side of the aisle, Christine crossed her arms and leaned back, a small pleased smile twisting her lips. Janelle leaned in towards her attorney, her finger pointed at the binder full of files. Her face serene but stern, that of a woman who had waited years for this affirmation. Mary did not move, but there was a haunting quality to her silence, something that caused even the press to catch their eyes glancing at her face. The gallery buzzed with whispers. Did you see those figures? One fan breathed. $200,000, down the drain. Another grumbled. A reporter quietly spoke into her recorder, her eyes wide. Breaking news from the sister wives' courtroom. Evidence uncovers secret accounts. Robin's name attached to secret money. The drama has escalated. The judge rapped her gavel a second time. Order? I will clear this courtroom if I hear another comment from the gallery. But the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that hums, filled with tension, buzzing with questions. The judge looked at Kody, her gaze piercing. Mr. Brown, this evidence is disturbing. The court wants a clear explanation. Not feeling, not evasion. Do you have one? Kody dropped his hands, his eyes red-rimmed, his hair slick with sweat. His lips quivered as he leaned in close to the microphone. Your Honor, they're distorting it. They're portraying me as a thief. But I'm not. I'm not. His voice cracked. I supported this family. I did what I had to do. Christine's lawyer rose. With respect, Your Honor, the records speak for themselves. Mr. Brown can claim sacrifice all he wants, but numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie, Christine echoed under her breath, her words carrying just enough weight to ripple through the courtroom. The judge's gaze didn't waver. We will examine these records further. For now, this session will continue with testimonies regarding how these financial actions impacted the plaintiffs. His when the wives really started talking. Christine went first. She stood, her yellow shirt reflecting the fluorescent lighting, her voice firm but laced with years of hurt. I ended this marriage because I came to realize I was never first, not even second or third. My kids and I were an afterthought as Kody constructed a life with Robin. He instructed us all to be patient, that our time would come. But while we waited, while I prayed for justice, he quietly secured her future at our cost. That wasn't leadership. That wasn't family. That was betrayal. Gasps murmured through the gallery once again. A reporter's pen cracked from being pressed too hard on the paper. Then Janelle stood up. Her voice was biting, analytical. He managed finances with Kody for years. He said every cent counted, that we had to cut back for the greater good. But the greater good was just Robin's house. Robin's security. Robin's fantasy. I was stuck trying to pay bills while he invested our combined resources into accounts I couldn't even get into. It wasn't strategy. It was lies. Kody shook his head hard, saying lies. All lies. But nobody looked at him. At last attention turned to Mary. She arose slowly. Her steps were ponderous, weighted as though weighed down by years. She did not glance at Kody when she addressed the court. Her eyes remained fixed on the judge. I was the first wife. I sacrificed more than anyone to live this way. I stood by him when people ridiculed us. I remained when my marriage had died, just so his reputation would remain intact. And while I withered away quietly, he used my devotion like a shield to construct something that had no space for me. I wasn't a wife. I was a prop. Her voice caught on the final word. She sat down in silence, but the effect of her testimony hung in the heavy air. Kody leaned forward once more, his face contorted with pain. That's not true. I loved all of you. You're distorting the past to make me out to be the bad guy. I gave up everything. The judge's gavel came down hard. Mr. Brown, that's enough. Sit down or face contempt of court. Kody's mouth fell open, and then closed again. He leaned back in his chair, his hands shaking wildly. The journalists in the rear mumbled with anger. Their titles already afloat. His other wives testify. Kody Brown revealed in courtroom shock. Secret accounts shatter Brown's defense. First wife Mary speaks out, refers to herself as a prop. Outside the courthouse, flashbulbs popped. Fans who were unable to squeeze inside displayed homemade signs, some of which had justice for Christine written on them. Others jeering at Kody with such gems as Coyote Pass lies and Robin's retirement fund. The world outside the courtroom was already churning, consuming every morsel. Inside, the judge reclined in her chair, face impassive, but the magnitude of what had just passed between them lingered in the air. Kody had attempted to portray himself as the hero of his family. Now, brick by brick, his wives were building an entirely different picture, that of a man who used loyalty like currency, secrecy as strategy, and love as leverage. The silence that followed was not like the one that had begun the day. This wasn't the silence of anticipation. This was the silence of discovery, of truths too heavy to bear. And as the gavel finally came down to adjourn the day's session, one truth was inescapable. The evidence had shattered Kody's empire wide open, but the testimonies, they had burned it down. The next morning, the courtroom was heavier than ever. The air was heavy with expectation, the sort that made every whisper sharper and every step feel magnified. Outside, the courthouse was besieged by reporters, fans and camera crews who had spent the night, eager for the next big story. Inside, every seat was filled again. No one wanted to miss what was about to happen. Kody sat at the defense table, more rumpled than ever. His tie was undone, his eyes bloodshot, his jaw clenched with the fury of a man aware control was falling further and further away. But next to him, Robin was changed. Her normally precise demeanor was missing. Her face was white, her lips shook, and her eyes flicked wildly around the room, like a caged bird. The judge entered, and the session began. Today, she announced, we will hear further testimony and review the impact of the financial evidence presented yesterday. The words had barely left her mouth when Robin suddenly shifted in her chair, her breathing uneven. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the table. And then, before anyone could stop her, she stood. Your Honor, she blurted, her voice trembling. I have to say something. The courtroom froze. Kody snapped his head toward her, his eyes blazing. Robin, sit down, he hissed under his breath. But she shook her head violently. No, she whispered, louder this time. No more. The judge studied her carefully. Mrs. Brown, if you wish to testify, you'll need to be sworn in. Robin nodded hastily, desperately. In an instant, the bailiff was by her side, holding up his hand as she took the oath. Her voice broke as she promised to tell the truth. She sat down once more, but this time not next to Kody. She took her seat on the witness stand, leaving him to sit alone at the defense table. The space between them was limited in distance, but vast in significance. The courtroom leaned in as she took a tremulous breath. For years, Robin started, speaking in a soft whisper. I've been cast as the favorite, the wife who stole him, the reason this family imploded. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and I kept telling myself it wasn't true, that I was simply loving my husband, that I was simply trying to fit in. But the truth is, she gulped hard, her gaze darting to Kody. The truth is, they're right. I was made the favorite. He made me the favorite, and I allowed him to. The gallery exploded into gasps. Kody jumped to his feet. Stop this. Robin, don't you dare. The judge bashed her gavel. Mr. Brown, sit down. Kody stood statue still, fists clenched, his entire body shuddering with fury. Robin's weeping filled the silence. Told me we needed to keep things secret, she went on, the words tumbling out more quickly now. That the other wives wouldn't get it, that they would just use it as ammunition against him. Said it was for the family's benefit. But the books, the houses, the money, it was always us. Him and me. Her voice broke. And I trusted him. Trusted every single word. Christine shut her eyes, tears tracking silently down her face. Janelle sat up, her mouth set in a firm line, her rage checked only by confirmation. Mary gazed directly ahead, unwinking, her hands gripped so tightly in her lap that they shook. Robin's tears increased. I wanted to be their sister. I wanted them to love me, but I watched him pull them down, in order to build me up. He said it was the only way. He said, her voice utterly broke. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders jerking with uncontrollable crying. The courtroom gasped. Robin had been the quiet defender at Kody's side for years, the one who stood up for him, the one who remained with him even when the others departed. And yet here she was, breaking apart before the world, proving what the wives had so long been claiming. The judge tilted forward. Mrs. Brown, are you saying you knew of the accounts? Robin let her hands fall, her tear-streaked face. She nodded meekly. Yes, not at first, but later. I knew, and I didn't prevent it. I convinced myself it was fine, because he was the head of the family, because he loved me, because I wanted to believe I wasn't the outsider. But deep down I knew it wasn't right. Kody sprang out of his seat once more, banging his fists on the table. Robin, stop talking. You don't know what you're saying. His voice broke with desperation. They'll twist this. They'll kill us both. But Robin swiveled to him, her face streaming with tears, her voice becoming suddenly crisp through the sobs. "No, Kody, you already killed us." The words pierced deeper than any testimony could. The courtroom erupted in shock, fans whispering wildly, reporters scrambling to write down every word. The judge's gavel crashed. "Order, if this courtroom is unable to maintain order, I will clear the room." Gradually the commotion died down, but the tension was agonizing. Kody was transfixed, his eyes fixed on Robin, as if he'd been pierced with a knife. His lips quivered, his fists balled, his eyes wild. He opened his mouth, and yet nothing came out. Robin brushed away her tears, her voice now barely above a whisper. "I don't know what comes next, but I can't keep carrying his secrets anymore, not when it's hurt so many people." She dropped her eyes, shattered as the courtroom remained in mute shock. Robin had been regarded as untouchable for years, Kody's shield, the one wife who would never depart from his side. But now, at this time, she wasn't his shield, she was the chink in his armor. The judge glared between Robin and Kody, her face serious. "This evidence will be accepted. We'll proceed tomorrow with more witness testimony." The gavel fell, closing the proceedings. But people didn't budge. Reporters muttered urgently. Fans were gripping their chests. The wives shared glances that said everything. Kody froze, his chest rising and falling, his eyes incinerating Robin. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. As the bailiff yelled for the courtroom to empty, one fact echoed louder than the bedlam outside. Kody Brown had lost his most staunch ally, and in losing her, he may have lost everything. The courthouse steps the following morning were pandemonium. Journalists buzzed like bees, microphones thrust in the face of anyone who appeared to be in any way related to the Brown family. Supporters stood with signs aloft, some proclaiming allegiance to Christine and Janelle, others ridiculing Kody with brutal taunts. Helicopters whirred above, broadcasting the commotion for the 6 o'clock news. But within, things were quite different. The wives sat together now, silent but imposing. Robin sat by herself, her head down, her tissues bunched in her fist. Kody stood alone at the defense table, his eyes sunken, his face empty. For the first time, he appeared to be a man who realized that he was losing. The judge brought the court back into order. "Today," she intoned, "we will have testimony from members of the Brown children who have requested to testify. Their points of view are very important to an understanding of the effect of Mr. Brown's actions." The courtroom stirred with a sudden buzz. Fans slouched forward. Reporters struggled to reposition their cameras. No one had anticipated this surprise. The children, the center of the Brown saga, now taking on the courtroom arena. The bailiff opened the side door, and in came the first witness, Peden, Christine's lanky, broad-shouldered son. His face was stern, his jaw clenched as he entered the stand. Having taken the oath, he leaned in towards the microphone. "I grew up watching my mother cry more times than I can remember. I watched her think she wasn't good enough, that she had to compete for my dad's attention, as he was always around Robin. And when we needed help, school money, money for necessities, we were told to be patient because there wasn't enough. But Robin's children had it all. New stuff, new home, new life, and we knew. We all knew." Kody leapt forward in his chair. "That's not true, Peden. Don't you dare twist." The judge pounded the gavel. "Mr. Brown, one more display of this behavior, and you'll be escorted out." Peden did not so much as blink. "Yes, he looked straight into his father's eyes. "You taught us silence was loyalty, but what it actually meant was keeping up your reputation while you destroyed us." "I'm finished being silent." Gasps filled the room. Christine's hands shook, but her chin remained high, pride in her son's courage shining in her eyes. The other child was Janelle's daughter, Maddie. She walked to the stand with firm steps, her face serene but her voice edgy. "My mom worked hard to keep us even. She stretched $1. She held the home together while my dad promised things he never delivered. I would ask her why we couldn't have some things, and she'd smile and say, 'We're saving for the family,' but I see now the reality. We were not saving for the family. We were paying for Robin's fantasy, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's acceptable." Reporters scribbled furiously. A woman in the gallery gasped out loud, covering her mouth. Kody shook his head, his hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. "They don't understand," he muttered. But his words were drowned out by the next wave of testimony. Another child entered, Leon, Mary's only child. Their eyes burned with both pain and defiance as they stepped onto the stand. "I was always told that family was everything," Leon said, his voice calm, level. "But family did not equal equality. Family equaled Dad choosing who was important. And it wasn't us. Not me. Not my mom. We were shoved to the side while Robin was the priority. He can stand here and claim he made sacrifices for us. But the fact is plain, he sacrificed us. For her. For his pride. For his control." The room fell silent after Leon's statement, choking. The judge even shifted back a bit, the gravity of the evidence crushing the entire room. Kody's face twisted in rage. "That isn't true. I loved all of you. I gave you everything I could." Robin spun on him, her face streaming with tears and hard. "Stop, Kody. Stop lying. They're only telling us what we all know." The courtroom descended into chaos. Supporters wailed, reporters yelled questions. The gavel rained down repeatedly. "Order, order in this court," the judge thundered. At last, silence fell. Another child appeared on the stand. Savannah, Janelle's youngest. She was subdued, fidgety, her hands white-knuckled on the microphone. "I don't remember a lot of good times with my dad. I remember broken promises. I recall hearing that we couldn't possibly afford things, while watching Robin's kids receive it all. I recall my mother crying when she felt no one was listening. And I recall understanding that he didn't wish to be around us. That he wished to be elsewhere, with someone else." The last word brought a shudder, and for the first time Janelle's tears flowed freely. The judge's expression was pinched, but her eyes relaxed for an instant. "Thank you, Savannah." The testimonies of the children had weighed down the courtroom more than anyone could have anticipated. These were no longer mere money betrayals. These were flesh wounds. Wounds borne by the very individuals Kody used to boast of fathering on reality TV. Kody sat silently, his face white, his eyes glazed, his mouth parted, but words wouldn't come. For the first time he seemed to see that he couldn't fight this war anymore. He couldn't scream about it. He couldn't spin it. The truth had come from the voices he could not shut out. His own children. The wives sat together, their faces weighted with emotion but strong together. Robin sat alone, her quiet sobs, her tissues dripping wet. And Kody sat by himself, alone, completely, absolutely alone. The judge brought down her gavel. "The children's testimonies are accepted. This session is closed." As the crowd moved out, the whispers hung in the air like thunder. The headlines were already being written. Brown children reveal their father in court. Sister wives trial turns explosive as kids testify. Kody Brown stands alone, betrayed by his own family, and as Kody slumped at the defense table blankly staring at the floor, one thing became excruciatingly apparent to all who were watching. The voices of the children had done what no evidence, no testimony, no allegation ever could do. They destroyed the final illusion of Kody Brown's control. The courthouse was never louder. Session 8 had concluded with the children's voices ringing in all ears, their testimony unfiltered, wrenching, and impossible to forget. Before the judge could call a recess, the courtroom was a whirlwind of whispers, gasps, and clinking keyboards by reporters running to break the story first. But the storm outside was more tempestuous. Cameras popped like lightning, fans pushed against the barricades, chanting, shouting, eager to get even a glimpse of the Brown family. Signs waved in the air. "Justice for Christine." Kody lied, wives cried. "Robin isn't the victim." And then the doors swung open. Kody Brown, accompanied by his lawyer, but visibly shaking with anger, emerged into the fire of microphones and snapping cameras. His suit was disheveled now, his tie loose, his face flushed with anger. He resembled less the tame TV dad of Sister Wives, and more a man who had at last snapped from the pressure of his own deception. The reporters swooped in. "How do you answer your children's testimony? Do you deny behaving in a biased manner towards Robin and the other wives? Did you keep money from Christine and Janelle without their knowledge? Are you worried about losing everything?" Kody snapped. "Lies," he yelled, his voice carrying over the throng. His lawyer attempted to drag him back to the idling car, but Kody broke away. All of what they said in there, distorted, poisoned against me by my mothers. This is not justice. This is betrayal. The crowd gasped. Cameras zoomed in on him, capturing every bead of perspiration on his forehead, every crazed flash in his eyes. My kids, he shouted, gesturing back toward the courthouse. They're thankless. Do you hear me? I provided for them. A home, a name, a future. And they come here today to kill me. For what? For money? For sympathy? Newsmen hollered questions above one another. But Kody's voice just got louder, more crazed. Christine has poisoned them for years. Janelle too. And Mary? Don't even get me started on Mary. They've filled my kids' heads with hate until they can't even see the truth. This is their revenge. Not justice. Revenge? A woman in the crowd cried back. No, this is the truth. And the crowd began to chant. Truth, truth, truth. Kody's expression contorted, his fists trembling as he waved them at the fans, the journalists, anyone who would stand up to him. You don't know what it's like to keep a family intact. You don't know what it's like to bear this weight. You sit and you cheer while my family self-destructs, while they destroy me. You think I'm the one. You think I'm the monster. His voice trembled, but he continued, pacing like a trapped animal before the cameras. I built this family. Me. Without me, none of them would even be here. And now they spit in my face because I dared to love one wife more than the others. Because I gave Robin the attention she needed. That's my crime? Robin, a couple of steps behind him, wept into her tissue, pleading with him in a shaking voice. Kody, please. Stop, please. But Kody couldn't stop. He didn't even hear her. I am not the villain, he bellowed, pointing a finger at the cameras. I am the victim. You want betrayal? You want lies? Look at them. Look at the ones who stood in there, turning my children against me, taking all I achieved, all I built. You call me a bad father? No, I am a father who made sacrifices. And this is my reward. The audience cheered again in a frenzy. Some yelled abuse, some yelled encouragement, but the louder he shouted, the more crazed the atmosphere grew. His attorney eventually clamped his arm again, shouting angrily into his ear, but Kody pushed him away. Don't tell me to shut up. Not now. Not when the entire world is seeing and hearing lies. The judge, who was still inside, had heard the noise through the walls. The court officers ran outside, attempting to manage the crowd of protesters building on the courthouse steps. The reporters pushed forward, thrusting microphones at Kody's face, desperate to get the meltdown on camera in high definition. Christine, Janelle, and Mary had left by a back door, under guard. Christine paused for a moment, glancing back at the event with a twinge of sadness and grim satisfaction. Her children had told the truth. Now Kody was digging his own grave with his own words. Kody's final blow came like thunder. You all want to see me ruined? Fine. Take everything. Take the houses, the property, the money. Take it. You will never take the truth. I am Kody Brown, the man who attempted to create something better than all of you can comprehend. And I will not apologize for this. He tore at his tie, yanking it loose, his chest heaving as the crowd screamed back at him. Robin clutched his arm, begging again. Kody, please. You're making it worse. But the damage was done. Each camera, each microphone, each live feed had picked it up. The frantic, rage-filled breakdown of Kody Brown. Not a gallant defense. Not a beleaguered father standing up for his family. But a man disintegrating before our eyes, vindicating every charge of control, pride, and betrayal that had been made against him. When officers finally led him towards the waiting vehicle, the headlines were already blaring on social media. Kody Brown melts down in front of courthouse. Blames wives, kids, and fans. From patriarch to outcast. Kody explodes in public rant. Brown trial chaos. Kody screams, I am the victim. And as the door of the car slammed behind him, silencing his last accusations, one thing became very clear. The trial was no longer about money. It was no longer about betrayal or favoritism. It had been the public unmasking of Kody Brown. The family man who professed to be the heart of sister wives was now revealed, live on television for the world to witness, as a man driven by his own ego. The courtroom would soon reconvene, but the harm was done. No matter what occurred next, the world had already decided. Kody Brown wasn't the victim. He was the bad guy in his own tale. Tension within the courthouse was palpable. The gallery was filled again. Reporters, fans, and nosy bystanders packed shoulder to shoulder, their gazes pinned on the vacant bench, where the judge would soon reappear. The air vibrated with anxious tension, like the instant before the storm rips open the heavens. Kody sat at the defense table, his face pale, his eyes glassy from the meltdown he had had on the sidewalk just a day before. He seemed smaller somehow. His shoulders slumped, his suit rumpled, even his hair, once styled with pride for the cameras on Sister Wives, was mussed as if the gravity of the trial had taken his last vestige of vanity. By his side, Robin was holding onto his arm, babbling frantically, her tissues bunched up in her lap. But Kody did not appear to notice her. His eyes were fastened on the bench, challenging the judge to speak words that could still redeem him. Across the aisle were Christine, Janelle, and Mary. Together. For the first time in years, they were not competitors, were not rivals in the complicated game of plural marriage. They were friends, sitting shoulder to shoulder, their hands interlocked in silent strength. Behind them the children filled the rows, standing tall after the testimony that had shocked the world. The bailiff's voice echoed through the room. All rise. The courtroom was silent as the judge appeared, her dark robes flowing about her as she mounted the bench. Her expression was inscrutable, her gavel held firmly in one hand. She seated herself, pushed her glasses up onto her nose, and surveyed the courtroom with eyes that seemed to dissect every falsehood, every half-truth, every carefully constructed facade that had been shown in the hearings previous. You may be seated, she said. The jostling of bodies occupied the silence momentarily before the judge resumed speaking. This court has heard lengthy testimony in the past weeks. We have heard from the wives, the children, the financial experts, and even from Mr. Brown himself. What has been laid bare is not merely a dispute about money or property. It is a tale of betrayal, of favoritism, of neglect, of choices that left scars on this family that perhaps would never heal. Her words hit like hammer blows. The crowd leaned forward. Christine's eyes filled with tears. Janelle exhaled slowly, her grip tightening on Mary's hand. The judge continued. Mr. Brown, it is abundantly clear from the testimony that you abused family money, playing favorites among households in ways that were both unjust and misleading. It is equally clear that you neglected the duties you asserted as patriarch, not merely financial, but emotional. Your children's testimonies have rendered it glaringly apparent that your actions created deep wounds, ones this court cannot disregard. Kody winced. His lips parted as though to object, but the hand of his lawyer on his arm required him to remain silent. Thus, declared the judge, her tone as razor-sharp as steel, this court adjudicates as follows. The Coyote Pass property is to be sold, with the proceeds shared evenly between Christine, Janelle, and Mary. Monetary restitution of $258,000 will be paid collectively to these wives for stolen funds. The gallery gasped. Christine clapped a hand over her mouth. Shivering, Janelle's eyes welled up, relief spilling across her face. Mary sat numb, her lips dropping in shock. But the judge wasn't finished. In addition, this court recognizes the emotional evidence of the children. Although monetary reparations cannot reverse emotional damages, it is my decision that custody plans, support obligations, and future claims will be guided by the rule that no child shall be treated as inferior in a family. Mr. Brown, you have not succeeded as a father in your obligation of justice. This record will attest to that fact. The words fell like a sentence of death. Kody's face flushed red, his fists bunched on the table. That's not right, he blurted out, his voice cutting across the hush. You can't say that about me. I gave them everything. Mr. Brown, snapped the judge, bringing down her gavel. One more holler and you'll be held in contempt. The courtroom was abuzz with whispers. Reporters frantically scribbled notes. Fans held onto each other's hands, their gasps at the drama. The judge lifted her chin. This trial is over. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down one last time, and suddenly, it was finished. Christine burst into tears, nuzzling Janelle's chest. Their children hugged each other, relief and vindication spreading over their faces. Even hard-edged Mary allowed her tears to flow freely as she grasped Leon's hand tightly. Robin cried harder, holding onto Kody's arm, but he jerked his arm away. His face contorted with anger and humiliation. He stood, gesturing at the wives, his voice trembling with venom. "You think you've won? You think this proves you're better? You've ruined this family. All of you, don't cry to me when it all collapses around you without me." Security moved in, escorting him away amidst strobing cameras. His words now sounded empty, the sound of them ringing in a room where nobody believed anymore. Outside, the courthouse stairs crackled with electricity. Fans yelled, reporters screamed, signs raised high. Headlines already splattered on breaking news tickers. Judge orders Brown family land sold. Wives win $258K settlement. Children's testimonies seal Kody Brown's fate. From patriarch to pariah. The fall of Kody Brown. Christine exited first, her children beside and behind her, their heads held high. She did not speak. She did not have to. Her smile did all the talking. Freedom, vindication, peace. Janelle came next, her rock-solid presence demanding respect. She stayed back just long enough to inform reporters. This was never about revenge. This was about truth. And today, the truth was heard. Mary, once quiet in the background, raised her chin as she walked away. For the first time, she was a woman unleashed. Leon accompanied her, pride in their eyes. And then Kody. His departure was pandemonium. Cameras thrust in his face. Journalists yelling questions. Fans jeering. Robin held on to him, holding her face, as he pushed through, face red with rage. But whatever he yelled, whatever attempts he made to spin the tale, the picture was clear. Kody Brown was no longer the cocky patriarch of sister wives. He was a broken man, exposed and deposed in front of the world. As the doors of the courthouse shut behind him, the wives and kids departed into a future that they had created themselves. The chapter on Kody's domination was over. And for those millions of people who were watching across the globe, the message rang loud and clear. The man who had created a family empire on TV had finally been judged, not merely by a court of law, but by the people whom he claimed to love. And this time, there was no way out.